Hello, everyone. We are the admins of the Back to the Future UK fan group on Facebook.
We hope you are keeping well in these crazy, unpredictable times.
Last night, we had the privilege of speaking with the lovely Jeffrey Weissman.
Now, many of you may know Jeffrey for playing George McFly in Back to the Future in parts 2 and 3.
But he has appeared in dozens of movies and TV shows, such as Teddy Conway in Pale Rider. He's also appeared in Dallas, as well as Screech's Guru on Saved by the Bell, and also with Dick Van Dyke on Diagnosis Murder.
We hope you enjoy our chat with him as much as we did, and we hope that it puts a smile on your face, which is what we all need right now.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Jeffrey, how are you?
Hello.
How are you?
Good, good. You can hear me all right?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
How's it going, Dan, Jack, Alex?
Very good, thank you. Thanks for joining us and making it very easy to get hold of you. And thanks for your time. I know you're part of our group, Back to Future UK fans. He's taken off recently. We only back at the beginning of this year we only had 400 members, but since the musical, it's taken off. We've got nearly 1,600 members now. So we just thought we'd do some of the members a bit of a favour and give them a bit of sanity for a while. Give them something to watch.
Are we streaming on that page now?
Not right now. We're recording and we'll be uploading it there later.
I see.
So they will be seeing it. So,
hello, everybody. Hello.
So first of all, obviously, times are pretty mad at the moment. How are you coping during this chaotic world?
It's probably like the rest of us. You know, I'm full of anxiety, and it's pretty hard. I think I've felt, you know, a lot of actors are in this work because they're sensitives, kind of feel things or try to be in rhythm with nature. And I think I've felt something coming for several months. I started having anxiety back in November, or actually October last year. And I was like, why am I, and in January, February, I was getting a lot of morbid thoughts and such. And I was like, what the hell is this all about? And I think I've kind of tapping into what was coming. I, through my life, have always felt earthquakes shortly before they hit. And once I was on a cruise in the South China Sea, entertaining with a comedy show that I'd written. And we'd ride into these storms, these electrical storms. And I was with my wife, and we'd be on the front of the ship, and I would feel where lightning was just about to hit. And I was able to point it out just before it hit, quite often accurate. So it picking up on the weird stuff. And of course, just not knowing when I'll be able to go back to performing. I am going to do a show. I'm rehearsing now online with my friend Lee Ehrenberg from the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, and Ron Campbell, a couple of three other great actors, and we're going to do a loose version of Waiting for Godot, called probably Zooming for Godot or something like this. So, you know, I'm trying to keep myself busy. I think that's the best thing right now.
Great.
Yeah.
Something like this.
Now, you've been to the UK several times. What do you think of the UK, and when do you next hope to visit?
I'm on my way. I first was brought over by Jason Joyner to do his show in Milton Keynes, the Collector Mania, probably in 2010, I think, and really loved it. It was kind of an odd show because he had put it in a football stadium, and we were in the I want to say the spaces in between the entrances to the stadium, you know, in the stands, behind the stands, near the concessions, what have you, and the wind would come howling through. It was very odd, but I was there with I think it was James Tolkien, Mark McClure, and Claudia Wells. I think that was the lineup. And the fans were just so wonderful. I loved it. Milton Keynes to me was interesting. I'd not really known, I didn't know that much about the place beforehand. It was sort of a design city during World War II and such, and really much different than my experience of England before my visits to London, the Cotswolds, Oxfordshire, and so on and so forth. It was like completely out of my expectation of a British community. But I enjoyed really a great deal of meeting the fans, and have become pretty good friends with quite a few that I met at that show. And then Jason saw that I was pretty popular and brought me back for 2 different London Comic-Cons. Of course, the big one was in 2015, where we had 11 of the cast members. You know, and it was the first show really that Michael J. Fox did. He had unannounced came to the Back to the Future reunion that the Hollywood show did in 2008 or 9. He came unannounced and he got mobbed. It was really a great scene. We had over 20 of the film cast and crew at that one. And, but he wasn't officially there. And I did are you guys familiar with Galfrey 1, the Doctor Who fan show?
No.
No.
So in 2015, the big Doctor Who show over here in the States takes place in, I believe, January, February, early in the year. And Jason Joyner from the London Film and Comic Con came over with some of his talent doctors who had played doctors and such, and props from the show. And he said, "Jeffrey, we love having you at our shows. I want to do a cast reunion, but I don't know how to get Tom Wilson there and Michael J. Fox." And I said, "Well, I'll write them both. I'll let them know how well I've been treated." Tom, as you know, hadn't been doing shows for 15 years or more. He just didn't want to do anything Back to the Future. He died for a number of different reasons. And Michael had never done a fan con. So I wrote them both, and sure enough, Tom didn't do that show. In fact, he didn't start doing cons until a year later. But Michael showed up and agreed to doing it. I'd said to Jason, if you want Michael, you know, whatever you pay him, match it to his charity or something, work something out like that. And he must have done it, because there he was. And that was a very exciting show. That was lovely. The panel, I don't know if you were either there or got to see the panel on film taped, but we must have had several thousand people in the audience who hung on our every word. It was really terrific.
Yeah, it was a fantastic convention. So I guess we have you to thank for having Michael turn up then.
Oh, okay.
Was that the last time you were in the UK?
Yes. Yeah. Though
Would you do another convention?
earlier this year he did, or at the end of last year, he did kind of suss out if I would, how many of the other stars I knew might, you know, be able to help bring over. And that was sort of the extent of the conversation. I didn't hear anything more.
That was for the 35th anniversary, I suppose. Trying to put something together for that.
And I've had several shows, Belgium, which was just before the shutdown, had made offers for me to come, and then they realized I wasn't in the first film. They wanted, obviously, to be centric on the first film, so they kind of pulled back their offer to me. And I was like, no!
So the next time you come to a convention in the UK, is there a particular actor that you might like to meet? Perhaps someone that you'd like to work with?
Sure. I've had just a fantastic time at each show that I've been at. The first London Comic-Con, James Tolkien and I were sitting together having a coffee, and the big Star Trek name at that show was Leonard Nimoy. And Leonard didn't show up until about noon or so, and James and I were having our coffee when he walked in. And Leonard saw James and came right to our table and sat with us, because he and James had appeared together in a show directed by Otto Preminger back in early 70s or late 60s. And it was thrilling for me to, spend the better part of half an hour just chatting with Mr. Nimoy. And it was thrilling to hear James and James Tolkien, who played Strickland, of course, and Leonard do their impressions of Otto Preminger. It was a blast. It was really, really hilarious. And other stars that I got to either be, that I sat next to or were at the same shows. I'm kind of a fanboy geek myself, so I'll go over and meet them and ask for an autographed picture or what have you, and so that's always thrilling for me. I have a great affinity for British talent. When I was studying acting, of course, Olivier was the ultimate idol goal to achieve, and I was a huge fan, or I am a huge fan of the late great John Hurt, and so I was able to get his autograph, and just a number of people. I even had one of the doctors next to me at my London Film and Comic Con, and I'm because I just had a cream puff. I'm having a sugar rush, so I'm blanking on his name. Sylvester
McCoy.
Yeah, Sylvester McCoy, because I had played Stan Laurel at Universal Studios for 15 years in Hollywood, and became friends with Stan Laurel's daughter, the late great Lois Laurel, and her late husband Tony Haas. I learned a great deal about his craft. Stanley was raised in a theatrical family. His father built him a stage in the backyard, and I saw a photo in his scrapbook of him directing his brothers and sisters on that stage when he was 10 years old. And so he really was quite the genius on developing his characters and writing and directing and editing. Sylvester had played Stanley apparently in his career. So we had a lot to talk about and got along very well. I've been fortunate. I had the same type of thing with my guest star spot on Dick Van Dyke's Diagnosis Murder. Dick was very close to Stan Laurel, and we chatted about him and his night with Buster Keaton, his relationship with these comedy greats, and I love that sort of thing.
Jeffrey, we're stepping over to a film that we all know and love. With regards to Back to the Future itself, I know me, Jack, and Alex have got great memories of watching the film, various things, various events, and so will all the people in our group as well. We want to know, what was your favourite memory of being somebody on set of Back to the Future?
My favorite memory. I have so many. I really love the art of filmmaking. I love the process, watching the crew prepping the sets, and on that film especially, the art direction was unbelievable, just to the minutest detail, both exteriors and interiors, both in 55 and 2015. I would have to say there was a good 30% of some of the things on the set in the McFly home that never made it onto the screen. There was a great collaboration. Robert Zemeckis, Bob Z, was very smart in keeping a very hardworking crew. I'm sure most of them had a mortgage and they want to meet their payments, so they always thought ahead and were working very hard to anticipate his needs on whatever scene was coming up, and paying close attention to what scene was in progress. And of course, working with the ensemble cast. The thrill for me to work with the likes of Michael J. Fox and Leah Thompson is really indescribable. I loved it. I of course came in sort of as an outsider. It was dubious at best, because I was originally approached to be a stand-in photo double for Crispin, and I didn't know until really the 11th hour that I was coming on to take over the role. In my mind, Crispin had another film conflict that he couldn't get out of. I couldn't fathom how they were going to make it without him, but as we learned, I took over. I suppose unfortunate thing was that where all these folk had many years really to hone their characters, I was kind of thrown in and asked to imitate, Crispin for the 55 recreations, and then the 2015 work. There was I think a lot more that they were expecting Crispin to do that was literally being cut as we were shooting. Although I did get to develop some things. In fact, you might recognize this.
Definitely.
When we were shooting the kitchen scene, hydrating the pizza, before we got to the pizza, Lorraine asks Marlene to give your granddad a piece of fruit. And so, she, does the fruit please with the fruit apparatus that comes down from the ceiling, and Marlene gets a banana and gives it to me, and I start eating it upside down, and the peel keeps slapping me in the face. And it was a very funny bit that I came up with that Zemeckis seemed to like. Unfortunately, as we know, it didn't make it to the film, but I think I have a still from it to prove that it happened. Also, I was fitted for a body cast that had a pipe that went out the back of it that went through the set, so that when Lorraine serves the pizza, she says, "George, rotate your access for dinner." And my costume was on over the body cast, and I did a little golf swing and went 4 and spun. And I think I have a photo of that. Once again, that was cut. Oh, there. It's got show and tell. So there's from the banana scene. Okay. And then there's in the deleted scenes, bonus material. If you look on the DVD, the pizza scene. The pizza scene is part of the bonus material. So you'll see me rotate, and there's a photo of that while I'm rotating.
So those are some of your top memories, but could you tell us a little bit about what it was like day to day filming on the set? Like, what was a typical day?
It was long. It was a long day. If, example, I needed to be on set and ready to go at 9 a.m., I'd have to be in the makeup chair by 4:30 a.m.
Wow.
For any of the makeups, whether it was the old George or the young George, either makeup took about 4 to 4.5 hours just to apply.
Wow.
I think, if it was 4.5 hours, I'd had a break, maybe a half-hour break for breakfast in there somewhere.
Yeah.
And then another hour.
Sorry, how long did it take to take the makeup off?
About to get there, it took an hour to take the makeup off. And
Wow.
I remember on the last day of shooting of Old George, I asked them to be very careful to take my makeup off. I wanted to keep it, and I kept it for many years. And in the last financial crisis we had in 2008, I actually sold it to Andrea Sardone, a gentleman in Italy, in Turin, I believe he is. He has a Back to the Future museum. That the Old George makeup on my last day, that prosthetic is in his museum.
It has George McFly's face in it. Wow.
Yes.
Was it in a jar? Was it in a jar or?
Yeah, it's in formaldehyde. No, during most of the recreation of the back to the Enchantment Under the Sea dance and the fight with Biff in the parking lot, we were shooting in the evenings. As you may recall, Michael during the day was shooting the last season of Family Ties.
Yeah.
So he would be shooting all day, and we'd get him all night. And those were pretty long days. Example, I'd have to be in the makeup chair by 4 p.m. to be ready to work by 8 p.m. When sun was down. And let's see, the meeting has been upgraded. Oh, we like that. And then in 2015, if we could get Michael during the day, it was generally on the weekends. So, and I was asking Michael, when do you sleep? You know, and he goes, in the limo in between the studios, in between Paramount and Universal. I was like, oh my God. He was a workhorse. So the 2015 studio McFly household shots that we had, I was on a track that ran on the ceiling of the studio that was built from outside the front door, that ran through the living room, through the television room, or outside the television room, and into the kitchen. And it took over 2 weeks, or give or take a few days, to do all those shots. And many of those days were 19 hours, 20 hours. There was even one 26-hour long day. And we'd often have a forced call, which meant that you had less than 8 hours before you had to be back in the makeup chair. So they were pretty long days, as I said. And of course, I was hanging upside down, which was pretty rough on my back. Though Dan, my handler from Industrial Light and Magic, this effects department, figured out a way to keep me from having to be brought down in between shots, in between takes, because it took a long time for me to get back in there and cinched in, and so on and so forth. So he built on a ladder a board that went out like this. So when we were done with the take, he'd say, do a sit-up, and I'd do a sit-up, and they'd put the ladder and the board underneath me, and I'd lie back on it and just sort of stay there on the set, twiddling my thumbs while everyone would go get coffee or whatever. So I didn't get off the set very much. And during the pizza, the hydrate the pizza scene, we had a team, a little army of women behind the set. I remember cooking these pizzas so they'd be fresh for each take. And the whole soundstage smelled like pepperoni pizza. And then we all got pretty sick of it. I don't think we wanted to have had pizza for weeks.
Going back to 2015, big 30th celebrations, you organised Back to the Future cruise to end Parkinson's. What were some of the challenges and highlights, and would you ever do another one?
Well, in I think it was 2014, 2013, somewhere in there. Let me back up a little bit. I was pretty obscure. People didn't know my face because of all the makeup and all. And it took a while before I was sort of discovered by the fans. And the first big group to kind of bring me into their shows were the DeLorean owners. And I started going to DeLorean shows and entertaining as Charlie Chaplin, or emceeing their award ceremonies, sometimes emceeing their whole shows. And starting in about 2010 or so, they started bringing in other guests from the films. Claudia Wells, then they started bringing in Bob Gale. I think it was that 2013 show, I may have the year wrong, in Chicago, I believe it was. We had Chris Lloyd and Harry Waters Jr., Bob Gale, myself, Claudia. We were all, and I think Don Fullilove, Mayor Goldie Wilson, we were all there. And during that show, it was really quite lovely. A local high school, that was a show in Dayton. They're all combining in my brain. A local high school did a short musical version of Back to the Future for us. And it was fantastic. So that was the first time that we all saw that it works as a musical. And Bob Gale, had already, I think, thought about it and was probably already writing it at that point. But during that show, or the Chicago show, I mentioned to Bob, I said, I'd like to give back to Michael and the Parkinson's Foundation and do a cruise, because the Star Trek cruises have been going on for years, other cruises with different themes. Why not a Back to the Future cruise and let the proceeds go to Michael's charity? And Bob said, I've got no problem with that. And then I went to Chris Lloyd and I said, would you come on that? And he said, oh, can I bring my girlfriend? And I was like, sure. And so I started spinning the wheels. I invested a lot of money and got a partner who had run the one version of the Star Trek cruises. I had asked him a number of years previous if he would help me with it. And he said, you know, you're in for a big challenge. No, you shouldn't do it. Blah, blah, blah. It's crazy. And then when I called him again, I said, I still want to do this. A couple of years later, he said, you know, my father has Parkinson's. I'll help you any way I can. And he turned out to be a great boon for me, because as we progressed, I ran into a lot of obstacles. Michael couldn't come on board because he can't do boats with his Parkinson's. Leah wasn't really wanting to go on a ship, and as it turned out, Chris, I needed to get a commitment because of holding deposits for his suite, for example. I was going to lose my money. I needed to pull the trigger, and so he said, "Oh, I can't give you an answer," and so I had to. Chris had to bow out. But I did get 6 celebrities. I got Dean Cundy, the cinematographer, and Kevin Pike, who was on the design team and special effects for the DeLorean, and Andrew Probert, who was part of the design team for the DeLorean on the first film. And then Harry Waters Jr., Mark McClure, who played Dave McFly, Harry played Marvin Berry, and Don Follow, who played Mayor Goldie Wilson, and myself. So I had 6 or 7 of the cast and crew on board. And I put together a band called Mr. Fusion, which was Mark McClure on drums and Harry Waters Jr., our singer, lead singer, and then Don Follow, great bass player, and then I was on guitar. And I used Dave Lewis, my friend who was in Shadowfax and Ambrosia, on keyboards, and our music director. And then my wife, Kimball, is our female singer on Mr. Sandman. I was hoping to have Leah sing Mr. Sandman with us, but it didn't work out. Hopefully in the future it'll work out if we get other gigs. So unfortunately, during the process of promoting, I kind of got thwarted. I think Bob Gale got cold feet on me and started backing off on supporting it. And I got sort of aced out of different gigs on trying to advertise and promote. And I only got really 50 guests signed up for the cruise. And it was not enough for me to even break even, I thought. So luckily, the Star Trek guy, my partner helping produce the event, combined a Star Trek cruise with our Back to the Future cruise. So all these Star Trek fans were also gifted in that Andrew Probert had designed a lot of the ships for Star Trek, The Next Generation, and also the first Star Trek movie. And so was that me?
That might have been me, sorry.
I was just like, what do I have for breakfast? Anyways, it's a long story, but we ended up raising with our auction on board and other people rising to the occasion. We raised about $10,000 for Michael's charity. And of the 50 Uber fans that came from around the world on that cruise, we had folk from Brazil and Russia, Germany, and really all over the world. They had the time of their life, and it was really a thrill. We had panels every day and watch the movies with live commentary and meet and greets, and of course our Enchantment Under the Sea dance with the band.
Yeah, I think Jack was there.
I was there representing the UK.
With your pop, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned the musical, sort of touched upon the musical there. I was with Jack and Alex opening night in Manchester when the premiere was on, and it was spectacular. Did you have any plans to see it? What were your thoughts when they was obviously Bob Gale mentioned it to you beforehand? What were your thoughts about it?
My thought was it's a natural. It really worked when the high school students did it, and so it was sort of like the proof of concept. And I knew, with of course the caliber of the cast they put together and the caliber of the team writing it and producing it, it was bound to be a winner. And when I got back to the UK, I was hoping to see it.
Yeah, it's a real shame the way it's turned out for them, unfortunately.
I'm praying that everything gets back on track. All the unfortunate, not only theater productions, but all the fan cons and all the film production, everything coming to a grinding halt is just time out of mind. It's really amazing. Luckily, though, I'm trying to stay occupied. Like I mentioned, I'm working on a loosely based on Waiting for Godot show that we're going to be Zooming for Godot with some really fine actors. And I have a quarantined con May 2nd and 3rd. And there's some pretty good actors appearing on that. So if you go to quarantinecon.com, you can see all the artists and talent that are going to be a part of that.
Great.
That's great. We'll definitely check that out.
Yeah. So the thrill for me, you know, being sort of looked at as the scab by Crispin's fans, you know, I get unbelievable reactions from these very adamant Crispin fans who say, you know, you're part of the problem. And you know, I was like, wait a minute, you know, I trusted that Universal and Spielberg and Zemeckis and Gale had Crispin's, you know, permission to use the makeup on me. And little did I know they did not. And so when Crispin sued, he came to me, and I was like, I did not know that they didn't have his permission. And he also gave me sad stories about him being abused on the first shoot and so on and so forth. And I'd also gotten stories of how Crispin was a pain in the ass on the first shoot. So I was sort of in the middle of all this, and Universal actually tried to keep me quiet and extricated me from various events that I should have been a part of. And so as time progressed, Crispin sued and settled out of court for his $750,000 for the work and the use of his likeness. And now he's coming out saying, you know, I'm a terrible actor. And I'm like, what are you doing? So it's been very kind of frustrating, because finding out that I was in the middle of this war going on between these factions, and then having the carpet pulled out from under numerous events and parts that I was up for, my life kind of went into his upside down mode and turnaround. And the fans have been the payoff for me. The fans around the world, from India to Russia to the UK, of course. The thing that I love is that the fans send me things like this. I don't know if you can see that all right.
Oh, wow.
Oh, brilliant.
It's my one and only old George McFly action figure. And hold on here. And this one came from a gentleman in the UK who was a collage artist. His name is JJ Stilatano, something like that. He's a bit obsessive compulsive, but he's made this type of art for Harry and Don and other characters. One show artist did his type of style of George in a drawing, and then another pop artist did this one of George.
Oh, wow, that's excellent.
So I've been treated really well by the fans. Like I mentioned, I've became very good friends with quite a few, and just love it. And that's the thrill for me. You know, the opportunity to give back to Michael's charity, and then to give back to the fans who love the trilogy.
Yeah. As you say, obviously, there's fans all around the world who absolutely love the franchise. What do you think it is specifically about it that people love so much and kind of touches people throughout generations?
Well, like James Gunn came out recently in this debate that it really, even though the script breaks a lot of the standard rules of 3-act storytelling, and the hero is sort of more of an anti-hero, you know, it's really a perfect movie. They had the luxury of quite a few months of pre-shooting development. When I was up for the role, or when I was cast to play George, I was given tapes of all of the screen tests, the makeup tests that Tom and Crispin and Leah were in, and developmental tests. And they had a lot of time to improvise in those characters and develop them, along with the script. And then, as you know, Eric Stoltz, the original Marty, they had 6 to 8 weeks of shooting. And so they were able to hone those characters. They had this luxury of extra rehearsal time, or even shoot time, which was in essence rehearsing. And then, so they were pretty polished by the time Michael J. Fox came on, who is a brilliant actor in comedic formula. He really has his comedy formula. His sixth eye of directing himself is just magnificent. Michael is probably the only actor I've ever seen who wasn't directing himself, like I saw on the Clint Eastwood film I was in, where he called cut. You actors never call cut or should ever stop the action unless the director calls cut. But there was one take where Michael said, cut, listen, I didn't even believe that myself, which was great. It was brilliant to hear that, because he knows if he's authentic or not, if it's working. So that really for me was quite rich. And that first film just had so much heart and connection and comedic timing, with the brilliance of Christopher Lloyd, of course, and Leah's wonderful vivaciousness. It just resonated, and I love the film. And I had worked with Crispin on an AFI film, American Film Institute film, with Dan O'Hurley a year before he got the first Back to the Future film. So when he came on the screen, I was like, I know that guy. He's knocking it out of the park. And Crispin was brilliant in that film as George. And so, and I'm often asked, what's your favorite film of the trilogy? And number one, hands down, number one really was a fantastic film. So it was just a joy to be a part of continuing the story. And now it's, one of the top 10 trilogies of all time.
And
well, some would argue that it's higher than that, but
okay. Absolutely.
Bring them on. Bring them on.
So 2020 marks the 30th anniversary of Part 3. And as lots of people know, Parts 2 and 3 were filmed together with the intention of making one film. At what point were you aware it would be split, and what were your thoughts on that?
Well, when I got the script, it was still Paradox. It was 2 and 3 together. But I think by the time I came on, they decided they could probably double their money and flesh out, so it could be a strong two separate films. So when I came on, I think they had already decided it would be 2 films. Although, I'm not really privy. I wasn't part of the production team per se, but I'm pretty sure they knew by that time it was going to be 2. And then I think also the reason they also told everyone that it was called Paradox is because when they were renting props or going to locations, the proprietors would hear the name Back to the Future, and knowing that it was the highest grossing film of '85, they were going to get charged extra, so I think it was, kind of a ploy. They're very smart people. The Universal has a lot of high-powered attorneys and a lot of accountants, bean counters, checking all the expenses. Do you know the story about how, when they fired Eric, I think it was Sid Sheinberg came to production and said, if you want this Michael J. Fox, you need to cut $1 million off your budget. And they cut the way that Marty originally gets back from 55 to 85.
Yeah, because was it in the desert or something?
Yeah, I wonder if Jack and Alex know.
Was it originally that they were? You mean the refrigerator?
Yeah,
the refrigerator and the nuclear explosion in the refrigerator.
Yeah, dropping the atomic bomb and getting the 1.21 gigawatts.
Yeah, but they were worried that that little kids were going to be getting into refrigerators, so they thought that was a bad idea.
And Andrew Probert on the cruise did a PowerPoint or keynote presentation, slide presentation with sound and narration of those scenes from the script that he did the storyboards for. So I don't know if he'll ever put that online. If he does, I'll be sure to share it on the fan page, because it's brilliant to see how it was supposed to be, the DeLorean actually driving underneath the atomic bomb being dropped.
Yeah, that was amazing.
At this point, Jeffrey, I was going to ask you about the sort of ongoing dispute, you might call it, between
I covered it. Oh,
the Bobs and Crispin, yeah. But yeah, you've covered that. Great, thank you. So what I'll ask instead is, when you took the role in Part 2, was there anyone in particular that you say you felt like a little bit of an outcast at that point? Was there anyone in particular that sort of took you under their wing, so to speak?
The first few days, it was odd. I had, when Michael saw me for the first time, when we were starting to shoot the 55-inch I'm Under the Sea dance, and I'm in the young George makeup, and I don't blame him, because it looks really kind of creepy. Let me see if I have a close-up here of it. But the first time he saw it, he said, Crispin ain't gonna like this. Here's as you can see.
Yeah.
And that's actually not Michael. This is Kevin Holloway, Michael's photo double. And I was like, well, that's not too welcoming. And then on set, Leah and Bob Z would refer to me as Crispin. It was very odd. Here's a close-up of that makeup. But the thing is that with having to be professional and keep the ball rolling and do the task at hand, after a few days, people loosened up, and I was having a beer with Michael in his trailer by the end of the first week, and I used to, especially during those scenes of 55, I go hang out with Billy Zane. I bring over my cassettes, mixes, and play music, and hang and tell stories. Here's a shot now. The profile. Can you see that?
Yeah.
So the profile. This is a continuity photo that I saved. That really does look like Crispin, whereas the full front one doesn't really. So that's why they kept me either out of focus or in the background, what have you, and then matched my work with the couple close-ups that they had from the first film.
Or had you hanging upside down?
Well, the hanging upside down was meant to torture Crispin, I was told by a crew member. This is a cool shot because I don't think this ever got out. Can you see, let's see if I can get the glare. You can see George's watch.
Oh, yeah.
So some people recently tagged me and said, oh, here's George's watch. And they tagged me on Michael's or Marty's watch. So I had to show that shot and say, no, that's, anyway. So the once again, things got better pretty much as the years went on with relationships. I've become very friendly with most of the cast members and crew members, and it's, like I said, been really wonderful dealing with the fans and these reunions that I'm not so much a pariah as I was, being treated like at first. And I think it's mainly because Universal didn't want to get sued. But it's like, wow, I don't know what you guys are up to. What were they thinking?
Yeah, I'm glad that you're not being treated like that anymore as well.
Yeah, though it's sort of come back a little bit. I've had Bob Gale sort of been gaslighting me in books and for events that he's a part of. He won't let me. He doesn't want to have me around because I kind of tell the truth and it's not pretty. I mean, I have a great deal of respect for the creations, the wonderful work that the film is and what it's become and what it means to people around the world and new generations. It's just that this non-ending war between them, Bob and Crispin especially, is just like, I wish you guys would get over it and shake hands and come together for, say, Michael's charity. That would be a beautiful thing.
Yeah. You've touched upon the fact that obviously relationships have improved over the years and you do see each other at, say, conventions. But is there anyone from the films that you keep in contact with quite regularly?
Yes, I'm naturally the members of the band. We still are in touch with the hopes of having a performance. In fact, I would like to see us play a Zoom concert. We would probably get a kick out of that too. I'm very close to Frances Lee McCain, who played Stella Baines, Lorraine's mom, and Mark McClure, and like I mentioned, Don Fullilove and Claudia Wells. Claudia and I first met going to one of Wendy Jo Sperber's fundraising events for her charity. Wendy had breast cancer and founded a cancer support group called We Spark, and they'd have wonderful fundraisers and golf tournaments. And Claudia and I rode up from Los Angeles to Santa Barbara to one of those one year as Wendy's guests. And it was just delightful to get to spend some quality time with Wendy again. It's so unfortunate that her life was cut short.
Mm.
And I'm very close to Dean Cundy, the cinematographer. He and his wife and I and my wife, we are good pals.
That's great.
And Jeffrey, what are some of your favourite movies? Any movies at all? What sort of movies are you into?
I love so many different films and TV shows. You know, I'm a big, I guess, Anglophile. I thought growing up that I was the only actor in my family, and I found on my family tree that the other actor in my family was British. His name was Jeffrey Seagull, and he lived in London and was actually on a series back in the 70s called Ghost Dad, and was on a Fawlty Towers episode, and he was with the Royal Shakespeare Company and so on and so forth. So I had already an affection. I had a great love of things like Fawlty Towers and Monty Python, Masterpiece Theater. I loved I Claudius. There's these television wise British films such as the Agatha Christie, Margaret Rutherford films, James Bond movies. Growing up with those things, and then translating to more modern films. I really have. I don't want to say non-discriminating, but I kind of love Mr. Bean. Rowan Atkinson, even though his movies are kind of not the Johnny Danger, is that it? Johnny Danger. Those don't thrill me so much as say his Blackadder series. Love that stuff. And I hear that they may be coming back to do I'm sure it's on pause now, but hopefully they'll bring it back.
That'd be fantastic.
Jeffrey, part 2, where the DeLorean disappears and the Western Union guy turns up, pouring rain, and Marty says to him, there's only one man who can help me. That's my favorite scene in the whole trilogy. Gets me here every time. I just wondered what your favorite scene was from the whole trilogy, whether that's one that, if you wanted to be very modest and have you in it or not.
That scene in particular, just to sidetrack here, Bob Gale came to me and said, for all this work you're doing with all the makeup, we'll try to find a role for you, maybe in part 3, that doesn't have the makeup. You can act with your own face. And so I looked through the script and I saw that scene and I said, I'd love to be the Western Union guy. And he said, I think that one's cast already.
Oh.
No.
And Joe Flaherty was great in that. He was terrific. I love the way that, that leaves you hanging. You just are sucked right in. It's like, what? And when the lightning hits the DeLorean and disappears, it's just like, how's that? Oh shit! You go, oh my god! It just really grips you, and it's really lovely. Zemeckis has a fantastic sense of suspense. Heighten the danger, heighten the risk, and you've got him. Get him with the comedy, get him with some emotional stuff, and then turn on the risk. So it was really brilliant writing.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier about you got to keep your George McFly makeup. Is there anything else that you got to keep from the movies? And is there anything that you would have liked to have kept?
Just the I think the Polaroids that I show. I have a few of those Polaroids from part 3 of my 47-year-old George makeup. A nice Polaroid of the whole family, and I remember Michael's burping from the Pepsi he was just drinking, so he wanted to throw it away. I said, "Don't throw that away," and I put it in my pocket. And I think I have the portrait, the screen-used portrait of old George from the last day of shooting. I was like, "Oh, that's me. I should take that." But I didn't really get sticky fingers like a lot of people apparently did. You know, someone even drove one of the flying cars off the Universal lot. I don't know if that one's ever shown up. Not sure if it was the Citron taxi or what it was.
Well,
but a lot of people love, you know, remaking the props and selling them all over the internet. It's been very handy. You know, from time to time, I'll play Doc Brown with a Time Machine DeLorean at an event, and if I have a replica prop or something to use, it's really a great thing to have.
Yeah.
I think we have one final question. Thank you so much. You've been very generous with your time. If you had a time machine, where and when would you travel to, and why?
You know, I'd probably go back to the mid 70s to see my grandmother again, because she was really the only one in my family who really encouraged me to pursue my acting. My parents knew a lot of actors, and because they ran clubs where there was bridge and backgammon being played, and they saw them drinking, smoking, gambling, swearing all day, and they said, "We don't want you doing this." And they even got advice from me from people like Omar Sharif and Don Adams, and they kind of said, "No, don't let them do it." But my grandmother would say, "Darling, and she was British, so born and raised in Mayfair, and she would say, "Darling, if you want to do it, you know, don't let them tell you otherwise. And here's some money, go buy yourself an ice cream." And I would love to go back and thank her for that encouragement. I miss her terribly. I even used a lock of her hair once on an audition where I knew I had to cry for the Clint Eastwood Western Pale Rider. I knew I had to cry on cue, and I had a lock of her hair in my pocket just in case I needed to think about something that really was dear to me. And fortunately, I had my fantasy charging and all my other acting tools working, and I was able to cry on cue and got the role in that Pale Rider. But yes, that's a tough one to, you know, there's so many places. I want to go back and meet Shakespeare. I don't know that I'd understand what he says, but.
But that's a really lovely way to end with an answer like that.
Jack, it's great to see you again. Please give my salutations to your pop.
Absolutely, will do. Thank you.
And thank you for inviting me, Dan. Don?
Yeah. Dan, yeah. You're very welcome. We'll hopefully chat again soon. Hope you stay safe throughout this pretty crazy time that we're all going through at the moment.
Thank you. And Alex, a pleasure. And all the fans watching, you know, thank you so much for being a fan. Come join me at Quarantine Con, and look for Zooming for Godot. And I have a couple films in post-production doing the festival circuit. Hopefully you'll see me on the screen again. You know, if there's a demand, also if you know, I can post little short films and free stuff from the internet if people want to see other things that I've done.
Yeah, definitely. We'll definitely spread the word on that.
And JeffreyWeissman.com if you want a signed photograph or Pizza Hut.
I'll definitely do that.
All right, be well. Stay safe, everyone. Stay healthy, and be compassionate.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jeffrey.
Thank you so much.
Jeffrey, you too.
Have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye.
What a great interview. Thank you, Jeffrey, for being so generous with your time. And Jeffrey has since sent us lots of photos, so we're going to be sharing those to the page. If you want to check back in a couple of days' time, we'll be sharing those. Also on screen now, you should hopefully see some of the links to the places that Jeffrey was talking about in the interview, including his personal website, as well as Quarantine Con, which sounds very exciting. So yeah, stay home, stay safe, and we hopefully will see you all very, very soon.
Bye, everyone.